Welcome, I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today we have a full agenda of things that we want to try to cover. We're going to be talking about the Williamson County Comprehensive Plan. And another way is, how do you want your community to look for the next 5 to 10 and 15 and 20 years? And we've got three of a dozen different people who are going to help to make that process very fluid. But you, as the consumer, as the taxpayer, have the right and obligation, I think, to tell us how you want that to look. And Mike Matteson, who is kind of heading up this program along with Rachel and Kristi, and he'll introduce each one of them. I'm going to be talking about this process over the next several months that ultimately will make its way to different bodies, and that in itself will kind of give us the makeup of how our community will look like over the next few years. Mike, thanks for being with us. Thank you for your hard work that you do each and every day. And to Rachel, thanks for being on board with us. And Kristi is not a stranger to us in any way. She's the one that keeps us in the middle of the row, an old agriculture term from a legal perspective. So thank you for what you did. Mike, take us off. Talk to us a little bit about it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thanks for having us. We think this is a very important project for the future of our county. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to get the word out in terms of what we're doing, what this is all about, and how people can get involved in this process that will really help to shape the future for our county. So let me first introduce a little bit more Rachel and Kristi. So I'm the planning director for Williamson County. I've been here about 13 years. To my left is Rachel Durham. Rachel is a planner that's been with us for about a year and a half now.
And I need to interrupt you. If you're looking at Rachel, you're looking at a professional rock climber.
That's very true.
For her work away from work, some of us love basketball, some of us love football and golf. Not Rachel.
Exactly.
She's climbing rock bluffs.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're raising children. That's just as dangerous.
Sometimes it is.
Well, sometimes we have days where we feel like climbing the wall, and Rachel actually literally does climb the wall.
Great.
Rachel came to us fresh from grad school from the University of Georgia, and she's a terrific addition to our staff. Kristi is one of the attorneys that work for the county. Kristi handles all of community development department. So Kristi works with us in the planning department. She works with our codes compliance, sewage disposal management department, and engineering department. And she's valuable from a legal perspective, but also just in terms of her familiarity with our processes. So we are toward the beginning of a process to update the county's comprehensive land use plan. And it's important because of the things that you said when you started out. The comprehensive land use plan is the overarching policy document for the county. And so as such, it articulates a vision for how the county should grow and develop over time and how it should be preserved over time. And it also contains a pretty detailed set of goals and strategies designed to help achieve that vision. And so it's really the document that sets the stage for everything else and will ultimately lead to how things are built and what things look like in Williamson County. The comprehensive plan, we consider it the foundation of our planning program. It's the vision, and we want to make sure each time that we do a long-range plan that vision that we create is based very much on the citizen feedback that we obtain along the way. And so we're hoping that in this effort we'll get tremendous input and participation throughout the process from citizens. The comprehensive plan itself doesn't have teeth. It's the policy, but it's not regulations. And so it's important to follow up the comprehensive plan or any long-range plan with implementation tools like our zoning ordinance, and Kristi can talk about that in a few minutes, to make sure that the goals and strategies are actually accomplished. Our current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2007. Like the one we're doing now, it was heavily centered around public input and involvement. We feel like it was a very good plan for the county. In fact, won an Outstanding Planning Award from the Tennessee chapter of the American Planning Association. We feel like the vision that it articulates for the future of the county is a very sound one. There are always challenges in implementing that vision, and there have been in this case. We're at the point now, we're 10 or so years down the road, and a lot has taken place in Williamson County. There's been a tremendous amount of growth in the county in the last decade. Projections suggest that that growth is only going to accelerate in Williamson County. And so it's important at this time to kind of take a step back, look at our goals and policies for the county, and working with an advisory committee, our consultant team, and the community, try to determine whether the policies continue to reflect the values of the community and whether there are strategies that we can employ that are maybe better suited to achieve that vision than the ones that we have currently. So that's essentially what this effort is all about.
So Mike, would it be safe to say that we first started this journey in about 1987 or 8, if I remember correctly, the first comprehensive plan that was actually done for Williamson County? Not all counties have these types of issues, or even have that in law and put in place. In fact, probably there's more counties that don't do what we're doing than actually do.
Yeah.
So it took us 30 years to have the first update,
Right.
20 plus anyway, and here we are from 2007 to 2019, we're having to do it again. And that will probably be the norm, is that we accelerate. By the time we get through with this, in about another 5 years, we'll say, well, let's go back and look at it again, because things change.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So when we do this update, we're going to be kind of looking at 2040. We're going to be kind of asking people to envision what they want their county to be like in 2040. So from that perspective, it's a long-range plan with about a 20-year planning horizon. But what you said is very true, that these plans, while they're looking down the road, need to be fluid because things change. And so we do need to be revisiting these plans on a periodic basis to make sure that the changes that are occurring don't require us to step back and alter our policies.
Mike, you've kind of talked about the need for an update, but what are those elements that are actually going to go into the plan of what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so first and foremost, the comprehensive plan is a land use plan. And so as such, it makes recommendations in terms of future growth and development, where development should take place. There are recommendations about kind of what form that development should take. So primarily it talks about land use, but there are a lot of related issues that the plan also addresses. One of the main related issues is transportation. Traffic is a big issue in Williamson County, mostly in the cities, although with the growth that we're seeing in the unincorporated county, we're also seeing the results of that on our roadway network in the unincorporated areas. And so this plan update will also have a heavy emphasis on transportation. It'll look at funding for public improvements, not just transportation, but other improvements. There are components of the plan that would deal with natural resource protection, and then community character issues also will be highlighted there. In terms of the transportation aspect and the funding aspect, what we'll do procedurally in this plan is once we finish the stage we're in now, which is essentially the data gathering stage and the initial community input stage, we're going to be working with our consultant and our advisory committee to start identifying potential land use scenarios, taking a look at our current policies and seeing how those might be tweaked. And so with each of those potential scenarios, those will be tested by members of our consultant team in terms of the impact that those various scenarios would have on our transportation network, how they would affect the need for roadway improvements, and then, of course, how they would affect funding needs that the county would have to incur or that somebody would have to incur over time.
Let me interrupt you here because I know the three of you understand this is the comprehensive plan update for the part of our county that's way outside of our cities. Many people may be watching this and don't understand we don't have that jurisdiction. Cities live in the county. All 6 cities have their own philosophy and plans that they're developing, but the plan that you all are embarking upon, the plan that we're talking about is only dealing with those issues outside the city, and there's a lot of interfacing that has to occur for those to be fluid. The last thing you want to do is build a road and it dead ends into the city limits of a field. That just doesn't work. So there is a lot of communication that goes on between our other municipalities, but if you're watching this, we can only do what we can do, and that is in the unincorporated part of Williamson County, which is still a vast amount of land when you consider it. In fact, it's a larger land mass than any of the cities, any 2 of the cities put together that we're having to deal with.
Yeah, it's about 600 square miles, and that's a pretty big territory. So you're absolutely right. Each of the cities, and there are 6 of them in the Williamson County area, have their own planning programs, and they have their own long-range plans. Our long-range plan will focus, as you said, just on the unincorporated county, but it is very important that we coordinate with those municipalities. We've already begun to do so with a meeting with the other 6 planning directors, and we'll continue to involve the cities as we go forward with this plan.
Thank you. I guess we're going to shift a little bit over to Kristi. Or do you want to go to Rachel first?
What I'd like to do is perhaps maybe have Kristi talk about the legal aspects, and then Rachel can close with the website and the citizen engagement and how people can be involved in the process.
So if it doesn't work, it's your fault, right?
Okay, yes. Good to know. Although I do appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about this, because a lot of times people say, well, why is the lawyer here? That means something bad is happening. And that's not the case. So let's just put that out there and be really clear about it. When it comes to the planning process, it's helpful to be, for me to attend these meetings and to be involved, because as Mike said earlier, when this process is over, perhaps the next step would be if there may be some changes to the zoning ordinance or some of our other regulatory documents, the subdivision regulations or the stormwater regulations or whatever.
Which are all, let me interrupt you, because you're going through terms real fast, but to the general public, they're all part of the master plan.
Yes, yes. So once the plan and the policy document is established, if that document then suggests changes to some of our other documents, it's good for me to know that and to be involved on the front end so that I can help the county, the Planning Commission, and the County Commission to work through those next steps. Another thing it's helpful for me, and then hopefully helpful for other people, sometimes questions come up in public meetings or in just inquiries that we receive from the public related to the county's jurisdiction in relation to the cities, or what the county can and cannot do in relation to people's property rights. Questions about how we provide notice and what our notice standards are and giving the public information. And so I'm there and able to be able to answer those questions when they come up, to guide the elected officials and appointed officials that are involved in the process, and just kind of, like you said, keep it between the ditches and everybody on the straight and narrow, because ultimately we want to get to the end of this process and have a document that we can rely upon that is that covers all the different standards that we want to gather information from the public that we can use to make future decisions. And so me being there to hear the discussion, to hear the concerns that are raised from the public, to hear the good things from the public, the concerns from the elected officials, helps me to step back and do some research if necessary, and just provide some guidance for everybody that's involved, and at least that's what I try and do.
Well, and you do an outstanding job and have done for many, many years. I think it's also important for the general viewing public to realize that the powers to do this are not just something we pull out of the air. They come from the legislators.
Right.
And we can only do what state law will allow us to do. Oftentimes I'll get a phone call and can't you stop this, or can't you do this, or can't you encourage that? But that's not the way it works. Everything we have is a legal document that allows who votes on what and how it goes through the process. And if you don't like something now's the time to go to the microphone or pick up the phone when we find out the areas of which to communicate, is to let us know before we develop this schematic of how we want our county to look like. Because once it's voted on by Planning Commission, gone through the county commission, it becomes law.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's a really good point. Basically, the authority of a county government to zone and to plan comes from the state legislature. The state is the active body, and they write in the Tennessee Code what we can and cannot do. And so the county has zoning authority, and people don't often realize this. It also has planning authority. Those are two separate boxes of laws. And there are backstops of each one that we can't really go beyond. It's a little frustrating for me, frankly, at times to go to public meetings, and people also get frustrated because they want, like you said, they want the Planning Commission or the County Commission to be able to respond to certain things. Sometimes it's not in our jurisdiction. Sometimes it's not something that we address at all because it's something that a state agency addresses. And so hopefully by attending these meetings, I can clarify that. Because the last thing we want is for the public to not understand the process and then get frustrated with us when what we need is their participation and their help and their comments. But the other point that you made is probably the most important point of this whole conversation. If people aren't happy with how things look right now is the time to come to the meetings and share their thoughts, so that when the Planning Commission has a zoning ordinance provision that they have to follow, that zoning ordinance provision reflects what the community wants. And that's ultimately the end of this process, that the zoning ordinance and the regulations will match what the community envisions for the future.
I think it's important to point out, and we're not going to get into that discussion, that's a TV show in itself, but within the last 2 or 3 years, the annexation law has changed, and changed drastically.
Yes.
Over what it had been for the last 20 plus years. And it was all because of a new law that occurred in Nashville that gave some clarity, if you want to use that word, but it redefined how cities can annex. Counties don't annex. The cities annex from the county. And that's a good example, because when you're going out to public meetings, I know just last night you were at one, and people don't understand all the rules and regulations, and the I's may not be fully dotted what the developer is saying. But there are things to go through and procedures, but once everything has been voted on, we all have to play ball in that same ball field. We have to realize the lines are there for the safety of our institution that we call Williamson County. So if you're watching this and you've got concerns, it doesn't matter that you're a city taxpayer, you can still have input into the conversation of things that occur out in the county, and vice versa. Oftentimes, you may not have representation in the city. You'll have representation in the city because we have our county commissioners that are representing you. And so it's important that you let us know that process. And it isn't easy always to find the middle ground.
It is not. It is not. But it's helpful that we do have a good relationship with the municipalities to have those conversations, because whenever the laws change in Nashville, we're all trying to catch up and adjust. And so having those good relationships and good discussions with the municipalities is helpful to everyone involved in the process.
So Rachel's going to make all this happen. Kristi's going to keep us in the middle of the road,
Right.
and you're just kind of going to direct all of this.
Exactly.
And Rachel's going to make it all happen and give us, explain to us how this process is going to work.
Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, this process is going to be driven in large part by citizen feedback. and other things too, but that's going to be a very important part of this process. This will be about a year-long process from start to finish. We're about maybe 20% through from a time standpoint. And along the way, there will be numerous opportunities for people to participate. And Rachel, if you would mind maybe going through some of those and talk about the citizen engagement part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Citizen engagement is, a huge component of the update to the comprehensive plan. And so we're trying to be very vocal about just the different ways that you can get involved, the different ways to hear from us. Specifically, we have our website, which is williamson2040.org, that goes over all of the different ways that you can get involved. We'll have several surveys throughout the whole process of the next year, several public meetings, and those can all be accessed online, and they will have all the details for that. Our website also just kind of goes over all of the long-range planning efforts by Williamson County. So if you've never read the comprehensive plan, that's linked on there. We have our different special area plans for different areas like Leapers Fork, Triune. Those are all linked on there as well, so you can kind of see what this has looked like in the past, where we're coming from, where we want to go. And we have a lot of different outlets on there that we can have posts on. So any updates will be on that website, which is just a very vital tool. We also have an email sign up if you go to that website, and you can get all of our email blasts that we send out, just giving you more information on the process, any updates that we see coming.
She's got a mammoth job to get the message out.
Yes, and it's an important one because we want as many people to participate as possible. So far, we've had good participation. We've had numerous interviews with folks. We've had some focus group meetings. We've met with the Citizens Advisory Committee, and a couple hundred people have already gone online and filled out the survey, and it hasn't been up very long. So we're hoping that number increases dramatically, and we're hoping that people really understand that they have a direct role in how the county will grow and develop, and understand that they can participate and help shape the future of this place.
So let's get in the weeds a little bit. Put some pokes on some specific questions. I'm good at that.
All right.
We have a annexation that occurs within a city, takes some of the county land by law. They can, it's legal. But the traffic feeds out on our county roads. How do we work together with our city partners and our county highway department and all of the other agencies that we have to convince people and show people that we're trying to make this the community of the future, for not only to her age at 2040, I'll be long gone by 2040. Not
that far.
Not that far. Not
You just
that.
mean you'll no longer do this
That's
show.
right. That's right. That's a long time. We're in 2019.
Let's just clarify
That's
there.
21 years.
Exactly.
Not that
But
far
how do
away.
we ensure that we have those points in there, that we don't just wake up one day and there's a large field and we have property rights?
Yeah.
Kristi mentioned that we have property rights of the owner, we have property rights of the current citizens that live across the street for something.
Right.
How do we accomplish all that, Mike?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and that's where coordination with the cities and regional planning comes into play. Coordinating with land use plans, because the land use plans are really what will dictate where and when development does occur, and therefore where and when the traffic occurs. So it's the coordination with our land use plans. As you know, you're involved in the MPO. There's a coordination at the regional level. And then the county has a long-range plan for those roads that includes city projects as well. So we tried to incorporate the city's long-range plan, transportation plan into ours. Ultimately, it comes down to, I think, coordination and then identifying ways to fund the road improvements that are going to be needed in the future, and to try to fund those to the extent that they're actually built by the time that they're needed. And that's a big challenge for every community, and it's one that we're going to be wrestling with as well.
So we have about 3.5 minutes left on this show. And Kristi, you've lived here a long time. Mike has too. Rachel's the newest of our members.
Right.
What are we lacking in our community? What do we need to do a better job as a community from cities and counties? You came from another state. There's a reason you came here other than just the job, and you get to live in that every day. And so I'm kind of putting her on the spot. How do we do this from your age, your generation, that we make sure in 2040 and 2050 that this is still one of the more desirable places in which to live in Tennessee?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like it goes back to that public input. If you want to know what people my age want, they need to be coming to these meetings and have a voice and like use that opportunity to forecast what they want to see.
Yeah, I would agree with her, and her generation, my children, are more her age, and you're certainly your children, and both of your children coming up, my grandchildren. Yeah. We want them to be able to move back into Williamson County like we did 30 years ago when we started this journey with the first plan. We want to have the best of whatever the best is, whether it's good public schools, which we all know that's a huge drawing power. At the end of the day, I'm not so much about development, but I'm about jobs. I'm about helping to grow. We don't do any of the, government doesn't build developments. We just throttle it up, throttle it down, and put the breakers on in between and say, this is what our people said they want. And if this generation and your generations want higher density, they need to speak up. If they don't want those higher densities, they need to let us know. Because we've encountered that in the last 8 to 10 years where a particular development they came in and built. Of course, all the homes are sold because there's such a vacuum for new homes in itself. But you have to, as a citizen, realize that field across the way someday could be a subdivision development.
Yeah.
Got a minute? What have I left out?
I was just going to say that we in Williamson County are extremely fortunate that we have the economy that we have, that we're such a desirable place where people want to move. So I think that is a very good thing. Our challenge, though, is to find ways to accommodate that growth in ways that don't detract from people's quality of life, and so that it doesn't lose what makes it attractive to people in the first place. And so that's where we have to be real proactive. That's where we have to be real intentional about where development occurs and at what densities in which location, so that we're making the best decisions for the future of, the younger people and the generations to come.
Kristi, closing remarks?
Just happy for people to show up and tell us what they want. That's the most important thing, that if anyone takes anything away from this conversation, because we can't guess, and so we want to reflect what we hear back from the community. So if people will just let us know, we'll help draft the documents to get there.
Rachel, tell us one more time how they can contact us, what website, phone numbers?
Yeah, so williamson2040.org, or if you can call our office, if you forget that, ask for Rachel, either one. I can get you on the email list. Our Facebook page for the county also has a link to that. It has links to the survey, links to the website. Everything is online there. Or our county website also has a link as well. So we've got it on all the outlets.
And remember, 21 years from now, if you don't like it, it's Mike's fault. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County Mayor. We'll see you around at the next time.